and welcome everyone, and a special welcome to our students in Lyon. Today we're going to be talking about working with the CIA. No, not the American Central Intelligence Agency. I mean a culturally intelligent approach. To be precise, I'm talking about intercultural competence, what it is and how you can develop it. I'm Dr. Debbie Swallow, and I've been working in the field of cross-cultural communication and international business practice for over 20 years. I do it because I love it and I find it fascinating. And to be honest, I'm on a mission to get others to become as passionate as I am about the topic. So, in any sales pitch, you have to answer 4 questions very quickly. What is it? Why is it important? Why now? And is it for me? So let's explore that for a moment. So what is it? Well, intercultural competence is the ability to live, work and communicate sensitively with people who are different from you in a way that makes them feel accepted and valued. Why is it important? It's important because it's a life skill that helps enhance your relationships. Why now? Well, the world and the workplace are becoming ever more diverse, and you can fly from your desk to many parts of the world every day. And finally, is it for me? Oh yes, this is definitely for you. Diversity and inclusion are paramount in many organizations today, and any job you're going for will require you to interact with people from all walks of life and from all over the world. The more you can demonstrate intercultural competence, the bigger competitive advantage you have over others in getting the job. And you'll get the job that you want, not just any job. So let me tell you about how I'm going to tackle the next 30 minutes. I'd like us to go on a journey together. We're going to be flying from our desks, so let me tell you about our flight plan. Our heading is Intercultural Competence, and the destination is getting your license to actually fly. Our first stop will be an introduction to cross-cultural communication, and that's in the form of a video. The next stop is the miss factor, understanding why this topic is important. We'll then fly off quickly to explore how to get your pilot's license, and at the next destination I'll introduce a concept to help you gain different perspectives about other cultures that personally I find very user-friendly. Along the way we'll calibrate the journey to intercultural competence, and as we come into land we'll explore intercultural competence and tips to create the mindset of a global savvy traveller. The global business environment demands a new skill set and the willingness to push ourselves into uncomfortable and uncertain situations. Let's watch this video of a little pilot's adventure.
It's a big world, full of difference and diversity. How you see others is influenced by your own cultural perspective, and how others see you is influenced by their cultural perspective. What happens when you speak? Do people from other cultures understand you in the way you intended? And what happens with different cultures in the workplace? How rigid or flexible is their approach to rules? Is formal or informal behaviour expected? And how do different cultures approach timekeeping? In today's global business environment, it is essential to learn how to navigate across different cultural landscapes. You need a good set of tools to do this. You need an understanding of how different cultures trade and do business, an insight into how different cultures communicate, and a clear idea of how different cultures manage people. To be a savvy global traveller, you need to be willing to undertake the journey of understanding other cultures. Develop cultural intelligence so you can communicate confidently across cultures.
The miss factor. There's an old saying, do unto others as they do unto you. This may seem wise advice, but it does make the assumption that there is an underlying similarity and general understanding. As I always say, the most ordinary thing in the world is to see things through your own eyes. The most extraordinary thing in the world is to see the world through the eyes of others. Better communication skills don't solve this problem. Understandably, you see the world through your own eyes and behave accordingly. To create better rapport, your very first step is to understand that you and other people see the world through your own filters or your own lenses, rather like looking through a pair of spectacles. Because without this intercultural understanding, the miss factor is at play. Misperception leading to misinterpretation, causing misevaluation, that causes mistrust, which doesn't engender either a happy workplace or society. So how do you get your pilot's license? In order to work and interact competently with others from around the world, or even others of a different age group or gender, you need to get your pilot's license. You need to attain the 3 A's to get your wings, to become culturally competent. The first A is awareness of your own culture. This is having knowledge about yourself and your core values and how these are expressed in attitudes, behaviors, and communication in your society and in your workplace. Secondly, assessment of other cultures. This A is about being aware of diversity and having the ability to compare and contrast others with various tools and techniques. Thirdly, we have action. So it's no good having awareness, it's no good being able to use tools to assess difference if you're not willing to change. Action is having a thirst to continue to learn more and the willingness to adapt and be flexible. It's also the ability to identify and respond creatively to cultural challenges and conflicts in ways that both respect and engage the other person. Let's explore how to assess other cultures. You can't understand a culture unless you can compare and contrast it with something else. Therefore, we need a tool to help us analyze. The Richard Lewis model, the LMR model, resonates with me and my experiences. I feel it is a theory that most of us can grasp quickly enough to get us assessing different cultural perspectives in a short amount of time. A lot more needs to be explored and a lot more needs to be learned, but it can get you off the starting block. It derives from research done in the late 80s and 90s about how people communicate. Basically, Lewis divides us into 3 cultural archetypes, and each archetype has a set of belief, assumptions, and behaviors that accompany their mode of communication. Cultures at the top in the red zone are described as multi-active. They tend to be warm and emotional, impulsive and loquacious. They like words, in other words. They tend to do many things at once. If you go into a meeting with a red culture, they typically will take telephone calls, have separate conversations with others in the room, and be doing many things at once. A butcher will typically talk to 2 or 3 people at the same time. In his logic, while he's cutting up a piece of steak, he might as well cut it up for other people. In the red culture, time just happens. You never manage it because relationships are more important than deadlines. Their communication tends to be louder than others. They also speak around a topic with stories and embellishments before getting to the point. And they have an ability to speak and listen at the same time that's that's something that you never learn unless you're born to it. The men especially have a machismo, a pride, an honour that needs to be upheld. In the blue corner, you have the linear active cultures. People from this zone tend to like doing one thing at a time. They're cool emotionally and they're factual. Meetings start and end on time, and everyone has a fixed focus set by an agenda. Organisations like to manage people by setting goals and objectives, having specific descriptions and performance measurements. Generally, people keep to time, and in some blue cultures, timing is absolutely on point. Communication is very give and take. You listen, then speak. It's direct and tends not to have hidden meanings. And putting your point across in just a minute is seen as an absolute virtue. Cultures in the yellow zone are called reactive cultures. People here tend to be quiet. They listen a lot and prefer not to speak up in public. They don't actively speak up, hence the name reactive. They are courteous, amiable, and accommodating. It's extremely important that they are not embarrassed or caused to lose face in public, so you'd never ask anyone their personal opinion, as that would cause them to lose face. They seek harmony and balance in their relationships. They are team workers, compromisers, and are used to forming a consensus before they take action. And they always keep to deadlines. It's rude to be late. So I have a question for you. Where do you think your culture lies in this model? Of course, people can't always fit into one category. There are cultures that fit between extremes. Between the blue and the red zones, you have cultures that are cosmopolitan, humorous, and persistent. They're quite dynamic and go-getting. Between the red and the yellow, these cultures have very hierarchical societies. I call them the mutual debt societies because they ask and expect favours. I owe you and you may owe me in terms of favours. As a friend to someone in this archetype, you become part of the family and you take on the responsibility of a family member. You're no longer just a friend on the marginal sides, you are at the heart of the family. Between the blue and the yellow corners, we have the strong, silent types. These people are fairly introverted, patient, calm, and methodical. They will queue up and wait patiently to be served. So let's see where the different nations of this world fit on the map. The red zone describes the Latin cultures, Spain, Mexico, and Brazil typically. The blue zone describes Germany, the UK and US, the Anglo-Saxon cultures, and the Nordic countries. The yellow zone describes cultures from the Far East. To the left-hand side, you will find many European countries, and to the right, many Arab and African countries. Along the bottom in the blue zone, you will find the UK, because here in the UK, we have a good deal of coded speech. Lots of could you, would you mind, please, and thank yous. And so we are seen as on the reactive side of the blue zone rather than the dynamic side. Intercultural competence isn't a destination. It isn't something you suddenly achieve. It's a journey. It's a journey of 6 stages, and we know that because people make sense of cultural differences in predictable ways as they learn to become more competent interculturally. Because we journey from a point where we believe our own culture is central to reality, to a point where our own culture is seen within an expanded notion of worldviews. I compare it to growing up. At the age of 2, you think your world revolves around you. In fact, you give your mum and your parents a real runaround. By the time you're married and your children are teenagers, you see life from a very, very different perspective. So let's begin our journey. Stage 1 is denial. This is when individuals experience their own culture as the only real one, either because they're young, because of their own isolation, because differences aren't noticed, or because of willful ignorance. Stage 2, defense. This is when we know about others, but our way is the most evolved or best way to live. It's a us versus them mentality in which existing assumptions are reinforced, and any comment directed against our own culture is perceived as an attack. Negative stereotyping can take place within this stage 2. Stage 3 is minimization. This is when we have come to realize that our similarities outweigh our differences. Individuals tell themselves that people are the same everywhere. It's a superficially benign attitude. In other words, people who adopt this point of view generally approach intercultural situations with the assurance that a simple awareness of the fundamental patterns of human interaction is sufficient for successful communication. Many, even most people, live their lives with this approach. However, it supposes that fundamental categories of behavior are absolute and like our own. Stage 4, acceptance. This is when we genuinely acknowledge cultural difference and see that that difference is within its own cultural context. Although we do not necessarily like or agree with it, we can accept it's there. However, we are curious and we ask questions so that we can be informed rather than prejudge, or rather than rely on prejudices. In stage 5, that's adaptation, this is when individuals change their own attitudes, behaviours, and even change their language to match their surroundings in an attempt to communicate and empathise. It's the ability to act properly outside of our own culture. And then we come to the final stage, stage 6, integration. This is when individuals move freely between cultures. They have a definition of self that is marginal, not central. And it's not central to any particular culture. It's quite fluid, it's flowing, allowing this individual to shift smoothly from one cultural worldview to another. Now it's your turn. See if you can spot what's going on in this video. What culture clash is taking place? And I'll leave you to discuss it in class.
Well, as you can see, Bo, we are generally very satisfied with your work here. Punctuality, reliability, productivity, the quality of your work, all top-notch. But we are concerned about the degree of your participation, especially during meetings. I know you are having problems with some slang phrases and words. How's that book of idioms working for you?
Yes, the book is good. Thank you for giving to me. I study it every night and it helps me understand a lot. For example, yesterday during the meeting, Sam asked me for a ballpark figure, and I know what it meant because I studied in the book.
That's great. So tell me, what else do you need?
In my country, people are different in meetings than here. If somebody don't agree with something, he might not say anything. But silence doesn't always mean he have nothing to say. Sometimes the people who say nothing have the best ideas. Chinese people always say, a wise head makes a closed mouth.
They do they? Well, Bo, you've obviously noticed that you are expected to speak up here. So why not just speak up when you have something to say? Just spit it out.
Old habits die hard. Also, when language is always a problem, it's even harder to speak up.
And what else?
I don't want to be disrespectful and interrupt the meeting to ask when I don't understand something.
Yeah, that might not work so well. So tell me, Bo, what do you suggest we do?
Well, maybe you should say to the people who are running the meetings to ask each person for their thoughts.
And then finally, coming into land. Ultimately, what cultural intelligence or intercultural competence is all about is awareness, knowledge, attitude, and skills. To be a global savvy traveler, first you need to understand how your own lenses give you one perspective, and then learn to see how the world looks through other people's spectacles. Along with that, you need to develop the attitude, skills, and behavior to adopt your communication to build bridges of intercultural understanding. And along the journey, you will develop these essential skills. Be open, be flexible, have emotional strength enough to risk making mistakes as a way of learning and overcome embarrassment. Have personal autonomy. That's holding strong personal values and beliefs to provide consistency or balance when dealing with unfamiliar circumstances. Be perceptive. You need to stay attuned to cultural nuances with your antennae focused to picking up on meaning from indirect signals. Be an active listener. Have cultural knowledge. Finally, create synergy and fresh options in your interactions. Before we leave the airport, here's something to think about. Having intercultural competence shows you are a person open to listening and understanding, a person who is non-judgmental and empathetic. Most of all, it shows you have respect and that you value the other person. What sort of person would you really like to be? And I hope it's going to be one who has intercultural sensitivity. You know, John F. Kennedy once said, "If we cannot end our differences, at least we can make the world safer for diversity." Goodbye, and thank you for listening.